My name is Lily Harper, and I'm 27 years old, a programmer living in Denver. But long before I became the woman I am now, I learned a hard truth. In my family, love was never shared equally. I grew up in a small town in Montana, where my older sister, Sophia Bennett, 5 years my senior, was the shining star in my parents' eyes. Sophia wasn't just praised. She was handed the world on a silver platter. Me? I was the afterthought, the one they noticed only when there were dishes to wash or when they needed someone to prop up Sophia's glow. I can still picture my 8th Christmas, clear as day. Sophia, 13 at the time, tore into a sleek box under the tree and pulled out a brand new laptop, the kind every kid in 2005 dreamed of. My parents beamed, their faces lit up like they'd just won the lottery themselves. Mom even grabbed her camera to capture Sophia's squeals. I sat on the couch, clutching my knees, trying not to hope too hard. When my turn came, I got a pair of mittens from a thrift store, one with a tiny hole in the thumb. "They're warm enough, Lily," Mom said, barely looking at me. "You don't need anything fancy." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat, and spent the rest of the day watching Sophia set up her new computer, her laughter filling the house. That wasn't a one-time thing. Birthdays were the same story. For Sophia's 16th, my parents rented out a local diner, invited half the town, and gave her a used but shiny Honda with a giant bow on top. The whole street came to gawk. For my 16th, I got a handwritten card and a second-hand notebook with a bent cover. "You're practical, Lily," Dad said, like it was a compliment. "You don't care about flashy stuff." But I did care. I just never dared say it out loud. School didn't make it any better. Sophia was the golden child. Straight A's. Debate team captain. The girl everyone expected to go places. My parents hung her report cards on the fridge like trophies. I wasn't a slacker. I pulled solid B's and taught myself to code from free online tutorials. But my achievements were met with shrugs. "That's nice, Lily," Mom would say, already turning back to Sophia's latest award. Once, when I won a regional coding contest, I showed Dad the certificate, hoping for a spark of pride. He glanced at it and said, "Good job. But Sophia's got a scholarship interview this weekend, so we're kind of focused on that." When Sophia went to college, my parents paid her full tuition at a private university and sent her monthly allowances for extras. I watched her post photos from dorm parties and spring break trips, all funded by Mom and Dad. Me? When I got into a state school for computer science, I was handed a stack of loan applications and a lecture about standing on your own 2 feet. I worked nights at a diner, flipping burgers and scrubbing counters just to afford textbooks. Some weeks I lived on instant ramen and free coffee from the library. Nobody asked if I was okay, if I was eating enough, or if I was drowning under the weight of it all. I used to believe that if I worked harder, if I proved myself, they'd see me. I stayed up late coding projects, hoping one day Mom would brag about my work in her book club, or Dad would show my award to his buddies at the hardware store. But by my senior year of high school, that hope was wearing thin. I'd hear Mom on the phone, gushing about Sophia's internship at a bank, while I sat in my room, debugging code until 2 a.m. to meet a deadline. "Sophia's gonna make us so proud," she'd say, her voice carrying through the thin walls. I'd pull my headphones on, trying to block it out, but the sting lingered. The worst part wasn't the gifts or the praise. It was the way they made me feel like I didn't belong. Like I was an extra in their story, someone who'd slipped into the family by mistake. I'd lie awake at night, wondering what I'd done wrong, why I wasn't enough. I'd replay every missed birthday, every half-hearted pat on the back, searching for a clue. But there was no clue. Just the cold truth that Sophia was their priority, and I was the leftover. By the time I was 18, I'd stopped expecting anything different. Holidays, graduations, family dinners, they all followed the same script. Sophia got the spotlight, and I got the scraps. I told myself I was used to it, that I could handle it. But deep down there was a quiet ache, a part of me still hoping for a moment when they'd look at me and see someone worth loving. That moment never came. By the time I was 22, I'd spent 4 years grinding through college, balancing a computer science degree with late-night shifts at a diner in Missoula. It wasn't easy. I'd code until my eyes burned, fueled by cheap coffee and the stubborn hope that a degree would finally make my parents see me. I graduated in the spring of 2020, right as the world was reeling from the pandemic. No big ceremony, just a virtual Zoom call and a PDF diploma. Still, I let myself dream that this would be my moment, the one where Mom and Dad would look at me with the same pride they showered on Sophia. Sophia, at 27, was already a rising star at a bank in Billings. My parents had thrown her a massive party when she graduated 5 years earlier, complete with a catered barbecue and a slideshow of her journey. The cherry on top? They gifted her a small house in a quiet suburb, a starter home, to celebrate her hard work. I saw the photos on Sophia's Instagram, her standing in front of a cute bungalow, keys dangling, Mom and Dad grinning like they'd built the place themselves. I didn't expect anything that grand, but I hoped for something. A card, a call, maybe a dinner where I wasn't just the background noise. That hope died the night of my graduation. My parents drove up to Missoula, which felt like a big deal at first. I thought maybe they'd planned something special. Instead, we sat in their old minivan outside my dorm, eating takeout burgers from a paper bag. The air smelled like grease and disappointment. Mom handed me a plain white envelope, her smile thin. "This is for you, Lily," she said, like she was giving me the moon. I opened it, my hands shaky with a flicker of excitement. Maybe it was a check to help with my student loans, which were already piling up like a mountain I couldn't climb. Inside was a $3 lottery ticket, the kind you buy at a gas station without a second thought. "It's just for fun," Mom said, chuckling like it was a cute inside joke. "Who knows? You might get lucky." Dad shrugged, wiping ketchup off his chin. "We put all our savings into Sophia's house. You know that. Things are tight." I stared at the ticket, its cheap ink smudging under my thumb. No congratulations. No questions about my degree or my plans. Just a flimsy piece of paper that screamed how little I mattered. I looked at them, searching their faces for a hint of guilt. But there was nothing. Mom was already talking about Sophia's latest promotion, and Dad was nodding along, like I wasn't even there. I forced a smile, the kind that hurt to hold, and tucked the ticket into my backpack. "Thanks," I mumbled, my voice barely audible over the hum of the van's engine. Inside, I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was hollow, like someone had scooped out every bit of hope I'd been clinging to. That night, alone in my dorm, I sat on my creaky bed and replayed every moment of the evening. The burger wrapper still sat on my desk, the lottery ticket next to it like a cruel punchline. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to earn their love. Every late-night study session, every extra shift, every time I swallowed my hurt to keep the peace. And for what? A $3 chance at something they'd never given me. A place in their world. I realized then that I'd never been part of their plan. Sophia was the daughter they celebrated, the one they invested in. I was the spare, the one they expected to fend for herself. The weight of that truth settled over me, heavy but strangely clarifying. If I wanted a life that meant something, I'd have to build it myself without waiting for their approval. The next morning I started packing. My dorm room didn't have much. Just a few clothes, a beat-up laptop, and a duffel bag with a broken zipper. I sold my old textbooks for gas money and booked a one-way bus ticket to Denver. I'd never been there, but it felt far enough to start over. As the bus pulled away from Missoula, I watched the Montana skyline fade, the mountains blurring into the horizon. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. I just felt this quiet resolve, like a door in my heart had clicked shut. Denver was louder than I expected. I found a tiny studio apartment in a gritty part of town, where the walls were stained yellow and the radiator hissed like it was arguing with itself. The place was barely big enough for a mattress, a folding chair, and my laptop, but it was mine. For the first time, I didn't have to hear Mom's voice praising Sophia or Dad's sighs when I asked for help. The city's noise, car horns, distant sirens, neighbors shouting, drowned out the silence of my family's indifference. Threw myself into work, taking freelance coding gigs to pay the rent. The apartment smelled like burnt coffee and old paint, but I didn't care. It was a space where no one compared me to Sophia, where no one told me I should be grateful for hand-me-downs or half-hearted gestures. I kept that lottery ticket, though, not because I thought it'd change my life, but because it was a reminder of what I was worth to them. A gamble they didn't even believe in. Leaving home didn't erase the hurt. Some nights, I'd lie awake, the city's glow seeping through my cracked blinds, wondering if I'd ever been enough. But I was done waiting for my family to choose me. Denver was my fresh start, and I was determined to make it count, even if it meant starting from nothing. Denver was a fresh start, but it wasn't easy. My studio apartment, tucked in a noisy corner of the city, felt like a shoebox with a view of a dumpster. The walls were thin enough to hear my neighbors' late-night arguments, and the window rattled every time a truck roared by. The place came with a lumpy mattress, a wobbly table, and a fridge that hummed like it was plotting a breakout. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't under my family's roof, swallowing their comparisons or tiptoeing around Sophia's spotlight. That alone made the leaky faucet and the flickering lights worth it. To make ends meet, I worked 2 jobs. By day, I took freelance coding gigs, building websites for small businesses or debugging apps for startups. I'd sit in a crowded coffee shop, my laptop balanced on a sticky table, churning out lines of code while the world buzzed around me. At night, I waited tables at a diner a few blocks from my apartment, serving burgers and bottomless coffee to truckers and night owls. I'd come home past midnight, my sneakers squeaking from spilled soda, my hands smelling like grease and bleach. My body ached, but my heart felt lighter than it ever had in Montana. Money was tight. Rent ate up half my income, and student loans took another chunk. Some weeks I'd stretch a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter for days, saving my tips. For the electric bill, I didn't have a social life. There was no time, no energy. But I didn't mind. In Denver, no one knew Sophia. No one told me I should be more like her, more ambitious, more anything. For the first time, I could just be Lily, even if that meant being a tired, broke version of her. My family faded into the background. They didn't call, didn't text, didn't ask how I was holding up in a new city. The only connection was our family group chat, which I was still technically part of. It was a constant stream of Sophia worship. Mom would send photos of Sophia at a bank gala, her dress sparkling under chandeliers. Dad shared articles about her latest promotion, with captions like, "That's our girl." I'd scroll past, my thumb hovering, tempted to mute the chat, but never quite doing it. Once I sent a simple message. "Settling into Denver. How's everyone?" The reply was a single thumbs up emoji from Mom, followed by Sophia posting a selfie from a ski trip. I stopped trying after that. I told myself I was fine with it. I'd left Montana to escape their indifference, hadn't I? But some nights, when the city quieted and my apartment felt too small, I'd wonder if they'd even notice if I disappeared. Would they care if I stopped showing up in that chat, stopped existing in their world? The thought would creep in, cold and heavy, and I'd push it away by opening my laptop, losing myself in code until the sun came up. That $3 lottery ticket from my graduation sat in a kitchen drawer, buried under unpaid bills and a few stray pennies. I hadn't touched it since I moved. To me, it wasn't a ticket. It was a symbol of how little my parents thought of me. A cheap, throwaway gesture, like tossing a coin into a fountain and walking away. I'd pass that drawer every day, sometimes brushing my fingers over its wrinkled edge, then shutting it fast. I didn't need their validation. I told myself. I was building something on my own, even if it was just a shaky foundation. It started with a photo. A neighbor posted a picture of my car in our community group, the white Volvo parked by my mailbox labeled L. Harper. The caption read, "New neighbors living large. What's her deal?" I didn't think much of it until a college friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, messaged me. "Lily, is that you in Park Hill? Heard you're bawling now." My stomach dropped. I yanked the label off my mailbox and double-checked that everything, house, car, accounts, was under the LLC. But the damage was done. Rumors spread like wildfire, and in a family like mine, even a whisper was enough to spark a storm. The first text came from Mom, a week after the photo. "Lily, how's Denver? We miss you." It was so out of character I almost laughed. Then Sophia called, her voice syrupy sweet. "Hey, sis, heard you got a nice place. When can I visit?" I didn't respond, but the messages kept coming. Gentle at first, then pushier. Dad sent a vague note about catching up. I knew what was coming. They'd sniffed out money, and now I was suddenly their daughter again. One morning, as I watered my lavender plants, a familiar gray SUV slowed down and parked across from my gate. My heart thudded. Through the window, I saw Mom, her hair perfectly curled, and Sophia, sunglasses perched on her head, staring at my house like it was a puzzle to solve. I ducked behind a pine tree, my pulse racing. They didn't get out, just sat there, talking, pointing. After a few minutes, Sophia said something to Mom, and they drove off. The dust from their tires lingered in the air, a warning I couldn't ignore. That night, Mom texted again. "We need to talk, Lily. We're coming to Denver soon." I didn't reply, but I didn't block her either. Part of me wanted to see how far they'd go, how bold they'd get. 2 weeks later, Sophia called. "Lily, you're breaking Mom's heart, ghosting us like this," she said, her tone a mix of cheer and guilt. "We're planning my wedding, you know. Big day next spring. Come home for dinner this Sunday. Just family. No pressure." I stared at her name on my screen, weighing my options. I wasn't the girl who left Montana anymore. I didn't need their love, but I needed to face them. To close that chapter for good, I agreed. Sunday, I drove the 6 hours back to Montana. The Rockies, fading into the flat plains of my childhood. The house looked the same. White picket fence, stone path, the old porch swing creaking in the wind. But I wasn't the same. I wore a simple sweater and jeans, my hair pulled back, no trace of the wealth I'd stumbled into. Mom opened the door and hugged me too tightly, like she was performing for an audience. "You're so thin," she said, then hustled to the kitchen without another word. Dad gave me a stiff nod, like I was a co-worker. Sophia clapped me on the shoulder, grinning like we were best friends. "Missed you, sis," she said, but her eyes flicked over me, searching for clues. Dinner was exactly what I expected. The table was piled with Mom's usual spread: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. But the conversation was all Sophia. Her wedding plans, her dress, her fiancé's new job. Dad bragged about her latest bonus at the bank. I sat there, picking at my food, nodding when they paused for breath. It was like I'd never left, like I was still the invisible girl watching Sophia shine. Then, as dessert hit the table, a lopsided apple pie, Mom cleared her throat and tapped, her glass, the clink sharp in the quiet. "Lily," she said, her voice sliding into that sugary tone I knew too well. "We've been talking. Sophia's wedding is going to be beautiful, but it's expensive, and we're thinking of adding a guest suite to her house for when they start a family." She paused, smiling like she was about to offer me a gift. "Since you're doing so, well, we thought you could help out. Maybe $200,000 for the wedding and renovations. It'd mean so much to the family." Dad nodded, his face set like the deal was done. Sophia leaned back, her smile confident. "You get it, Lily," she said. "Family helps family. It's what we do." I set my fork down, my hands steady. I'd been waiting for this, rehearsing it in my head. I looked at them, really looked, and saw the same people who'd handed me a $3 ticket while giving Sophia a house. But I wasn't here to beg for their respect anymore. "Family," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Where was family when I was working 2 jobs to pay for college? When I was eating ramen for weeks to cover rent?" No one answered. Mom's smile faltered. Sophia shifted in her chair. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on them. "And where was family when you stole my scholarship?" The room went still. Sophia's fork clattered against her plate. "What are you talking about?" she said, her voice sharp. But I saw the flicker in her eyes, the guilt she couldn't hide. I'd only learned the truth a week ago, when an old high school teacher emailed me after seeing my blog. She'd mentioned a full-ride scholarship I'd won at 17 to a top computer science program in California. I'd never heard about it. My parents had told me I didn't qualify, that I should stick to a state school. But the teacher's email included a scan of the award letter and a note saying my family had declined it, claiming I wasn't interested. "You knew," I said, turning to Sophia. "You were home that summer, helping Mom and Dad with paperwork. You saw the letter. You all decided I didn't deserve it because you didn't want me to outshine you." I looked at Mom, then Dad. "You signed my name, said I wasn't going, so I'd stay close and keep playing the spare. You didn't just overlook me, you sabotaged me." Mom's face crumpled, but she didn't deny it. Dad stared at his plate. Sophia opened her mouth, then closed it. Her cheeks flushed. I stood, grabbing my purse, my voice steady. "I used to think if I tried harder, you'd love me. I used to think I needed you to feel whole. But I don't. Not anymore." I turned to Sophia, my eyes cold. "If you want your wedding or your guest suite, no one's stopping you from earning it." I walked out, the screen door slamming behind me. The Montana air was sharp, the stars bright above the plains. I got in my car and drove, the house shrinking in my rearview mirror. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free, but there was a quiet ache too, a sadness for the girl who'd spent years chasing a family that never wanted her. Driving back to Denver that night, I let the silence of the highway wrap around me. No music, no distractions. Just the hum of my Volvo's tires and the cool air slipping through the cracked window. The Montana house faded in my rearview mirror, a blurry memory I was finally ready to let go. I didn't feel anger or triumph, just a quiet release, like I'd set down a weight I'd carried too long. The truth about the stolen scholarship hurt, but it also set me free. I wasn't the problem. I never had been. Back in Denver, my life bloomed in ways I'd never dared imagine. I kept my house simple, filling it with small touches. A bookshelf, packed with coding manuals and novels. A lavender plant by the window. A camera for my photography hobby. I poured myself into my blog, writing about coding and tech. And it grew. Drawing readers who left comments like, "Your tips changed how I approach Python." At a local tech meetup, a teenager came up, shy but excited. "Your post on debugging saved my school project," she said, her eyes bright. That moment warmed me more than any praise from my family ever could. I invested with Margaret's guidance, funding a few education startups and buying a small cabin in the Colorado mountains for weekend escapes. I traveled, not to flaunt wealth, but to explore. I sipped coffee on a foggy San Francisco pier, hiked trails in Utah's Red Rock canyons, watched fireflies in a Georgia summer. Each trip felt like a step closer to the woman I'd always been, hidden under years of doubt. My family's messages kept coming. Mom's pleas, Sophia's defensiveness. But I let them fade into the background, unanswered. I didn't hate them. I just didn't need them anymore. I'd built a life that was mine, not a reaction to their neglect. The lottery ticket still framed on my desk wasn't about the money. It was proof that worth can come from the smallest chance, if you're brave enough to claim it. Life isn't fair. I learned that early. But I made it fair for myself, not with millions, but with the belief that I was enough. To anyone listening, I hope you know this. Your value isn't in what others give you. It's in what you give yourself. Have you ever had to walk away to find who you are? Share your story below, and let's keep these conversations going. Follow for more journeys like mine.